Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Sew Along, the lunch hour Sew Along with Kimber Bell. My name is Kim Christopherson, and I am here to talk about Candy Cane Lane. This is actually part 2 in the series this week. Our first one was on this last Monday, where we made this block, and I showed you not only how to do the background quilting, but also how to drop your house block down a little bit further so that it ends up lying in the snow. So today we're going to do the same thing, but we're also going to put a little more emphasis on this block, which is the lamp post. And with this one, we actually are going to be talking about how to do that fringed wreath and some tips for that. And then we'll go into some ideas on how to punch the little holes along each of those house lines so that you can put your lights in it a little bit later. All right. So again, if you missed Monday, it's not too late. You can go back to part 1 in this lunch hour Sew Along for Candy Cane Lane. It's always recorded. All of these are recorded and saved on both YouTube and Facebook. So check out the Kimber Bell channels in both of those places. All right. So where we're at today, we're going to start with street lamp number 2. Once you know street lamp number 2, you can certainly do street lamp number 1 as well. All right. And the first thing I want you to do is, if you have printed out your instructions like I did here, I want you to look at page 24. That's where we're going to be starting today in doing this. Now, if you were not planning on doing your background quilting in here, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and open up this sample bag here and pull it out just so that if this is your first time seeing this, you'll know what I'm talking about. But we are doing this. Isn't that beautiful? And this is the block that we're going to be working on today. And if you are not doing the background quilting that you see right in here, then you would follow the instructions just as they are outlined on page 24. But what we're going to do first, before we jump into doing the lamp post, is we are actually going to do our background quilting first on that block using the Kimber Bell block by block method. All right. And so I will show you how to do that. Then we'll add our lamp post on top of it. We'll drop it down a little bit. I'll show you how to do that on the machine as well. And then we'll be talking about that fringe. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, when I talk about the background quilting, this is a separate file that you can purchase separately at kimberbell.com. We have a whole load of background quilting designs to choose from. I've chosen the one, I think it's labeled number 22, and it is the candy canes in the background, and it looks something like this. So let's go ahead and get a close-up of what I'm looking at here. All right, there we go. And I have printed it out here so that you can see in full size what I'm talking about. All right, so you've got the background quilting. It's got the candy canes and the peppermints, and you have what we call a block by block quilting method, which means we are not going to see the batting and the seams, which is really nice when we go to sew this together. Okay, so therefore that's why you see this outline box around it. Now, when you pull in a design, whether you do it in software or just directly on your machine, what ends up happening is that this is the design, here we go, that you have to, let's try it this way. How's that? Okay, this is the design that has to be pulled in on top of that background quilting, right? And if I were to just pull it into my file, I would go, okay, there it drops, and it will always drop right in the middle of your hoop, right? So if this were to lay right on top of the hoop, do you see what's happening here? It will look like your lamppost is floating in the air because you see there's some background quilting designs here and there's background quilting designs here, and it doesn't look like it's landed in the snow. So our goal is actually to shift this on our machine or in software to move this block all the way down to this inner line. All right. Do you see how there's two lines right here? This is our seam allowance. And I'm going to highlight it again so that you can, as a quick review, but you've got this inner line right here. And I noticed I actually used the wrong term for this inner line when I did this on Monday. So I'm going to use the right term today. This is what you would call the batting tack down line, and that is the inner line. The very outer line out here is your fabric tack down line. And we don't want to go all the way down to the end of the fabric. We want it to just sit right on top of that inner line, which is the batting placement line. Okay, so our goal again is to shift that down. It really is simple to do. So in the end, let me show you one more printout. Do you see how this printout shows that that design is still on top of the background quilting and it has been shifted down to land right along that inner line, inner box. Okay. All right. So let me show you how that's done on the machine itself. I know that last time on Monday, I mentioned that you could do it in software. Absolutely. If you've got software to do it, very simple to do it there. Let me show you how I actually do it on the machine. So we're going to get a close-up view of it this time so that you can see my screen here. What I've done is I've loaded two different design files. I've loaded the background quilting design file and I've loaded the lamppost design file. They're both right here. The first thing I want to do is actually, I'm going to touch the button that brings up my background quilting design. Okay, this is the candy canes, as you can see here, and this is the 4x8 file. So if you're wondering what file size to bring up, because this block finishes at 4.5 by 8.5 inches, then this design file you pull up is 4x8 inches. So I pulled up the 4x8 and I'm going to hit set. Now every machine is going to be a little bit different, but it will be similar enough that you could find very similar buttons on your machine. Okay, so I hit set, which means this background quilting design file is there on my machine, but I want to add to it. I want to now put on the lamp post design. So I'm going to click on a button that says add, and I'm going to find the lamp post, and I know that it's right there. So I'm going to click on that. Now, remember I showed you earlier that if I were to just do it this way and put that design on top of the background quilting, it looks like it's kind of floating in the air. It hasn't been grounded. So we need to actually shift this design down to that bottom, just the inner line, okay, which is what we would call the batting tack down line. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to hit set. Okay, and then I have a series of arrows. And so this is what I think nearly every machine will have something similar to this. If it's not exactly, it's whatever is the buttons that move or shift a design down. I can then use my bottom arrow and it's just slowly moving that design down. See, I can move it up, or I can move it down, and I want to move it down so that it lands on that inner line, which is also what we would call a batting tack down line. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. It is now landed. And again, if you were to be able to see this screen exactly like I have here, this is what you would see here. This matches up. In fact, I will put it side by side. This is my printout, And this is a big version of what I'm seeing right here. I have moved that lamppost right down to that inner line. All right. And once you've done that, you're ready. You're ready to go. Okay. Simple, simple. You will use that same method for doing this with any of your house blocks, the cocoa stand, and of course, those lamp posts. All right. So what I've already done is hooped my stabilizer, and I used the Kimberbell lightweight cutaway stabilizer for this. Okay. And I'm going to just place it on my machine and hit embroidery so that now those files are combined. And the first thing it's going to do is my background quilting. So I'm going to place my foot down, and I'm going to do this one like the outlines for this initial part in red thread so that you can see it a little bit better than you saw on Monday. Okay. So the first thing it's going to do is a tack down line, or a placement line. Sorry, a placement line, so I know where to place my batting. All right. Okay. If you have any questions, I will try to monitor this as we go. Patricia asked, do you want it directly on top of the batting placement line? Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be so close. It's either like right on top or just right barely touching it. Okay. Don't worry too much about it. It will all look just fine in the end. But as close as you can get to that batting tack down line, that's where you want the house to land. That's where you want the lamp post to land as well. Okay, so the very first step, and this goes with any of our block by block quilting method, is that you would have this outer square, and this is what we call the placement line for our batting. So we know where to place our batting, just like it says. Okay, so I'm not going to try to match anything up to the line. This is an oversized piece, and I am making sure it's bigger than that line, and then I will tape it down in place. Okay, so it doesn't shift. And once I've done that, I will then take it back to the machine where we will do a tack down line of that batting. Okay. Now, the other thing I was going to mention is that I am using a larger size hoop than a 5x7. Okay. All of these blocks can be done with a 5x7 hoop. All of like the house blocks and the tree block, and it's all the appliques can be done with a 5x7. But the background quilting, you need larger than a 5x7 because those are larger size blocks in the background. So you will need a larger hoop to do the quilting. But the good news is, if you don't have that larger hoop and you only have a 5x7, you can still do the background quilting like I showed on Monday. If you will skip through the first half, I should have found out when exactly I start talking about it. I'll figure that out. But about halfway through Monday's tutorial, I then showed how to use clear blue tiles if you have a small hoop, okay? So that you can still do this. So refer to that if you still want to do background quilting, but you didn't watch Monday's. Be sure to watch Monday, okay? The second half of Monday's video, we'll talk about using clear blue tiles to get that same background quilting. All right, so now I've done the tack down line for the batting. Let's go ahead and go to the overhead. And as you can see here, this is an oversized piece, right? And I need to trim away the extra fabric or the extra batting that has gone beyond that placement line. So I'm just going to get out my scissors here. These are the Kimberbell applique duckbill scissors. We love them. And that's what I'm using here to cut away and trim that extra batting. All right. Okay, the reason why you do this is because you do not want batting in the seams. when you go to sew this together. So that's going to make it really easy. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is place it onto my machine, and now it's going to do a placement line for my fabric. So I know exactly where to place my fabric, as the name implies. Okay. All right. Okay. Patton says, if you weren't pre-quilting the background, wouldn't you want it to stitch out without moving it? So the snow on the ground meets up to the bottom of the lamppost. Not sure I understand why you are moving it. Okay, Patton, that's a great question. If you're not doing the background quilting, the technique on page 24 will, by folding that up 1 inch, look at page 24 and you're going to see the where we have folded up the bottom 1 inch. That is what allows your design to sit down in the snow. So if you're not doing background quilting, just go ahead and follow exactly how it is described on page 24 and you will be good to go. All right. So here we go. We've got the outside line. Let's go ahead and go to this one. And this is now our fabric placement line. Do you see how we have this outer box here? Remember this? The outer box. This is exactly what we're looking at right here. Okay. And remember what I said about moving the design down to the batting placement line? That's that inner line right there. Okay. So just a little tip. Well, let me do this backwards here for you. If I go down this way, I'm going to do this upside down so that it makes more sense. This is the line that you're going to be moving your lamppost down to. Okay. This inner line, which is the batting line. Okay. All right. Right now, what's most important is that you actually have a placement line for your fabric, and you're just going to simply lay, again, your oversized piece of fabric. Oh, it got a little wrinkled in my bag there. Oh, well, it'll all work out in the end. We'll quilt it out, right? We're going to lay that over the top and then tape that down in a few places while it does our tack down line for the fabric. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to that point. Again, I'm going to keep this in red for now just so that it's easier to see on camera. All right. All right. Cindy is asking, what size frame are you using? In this one, I am using a 7x11 frame, if that helps. Okay. All right. You just need to make sure that the frame you're using is larger than the embroidery field of the background quilting. You can find that information in the download of the background quilting. Okay, we're almost to my favorite part, which is the background quilting. But I wanted to show you again, just so that you can see this a little bit better on camera here. This is, we have done a tack down line for the fabric, which means now this fabric isn't going to shift anywhere. Okay, that is that outer line, the very outer line that I had just shown you in the picture. Okay, that is what I'm referring to right there. All right, so if you were to take your finger and just press it along this line, you would feel that there's some batting up here, but there's not batting right in this area. And that's because that's going to be in the seam, and we don't want batting in our seam. It just creates more bulk, and we don't want that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm actually going to change my thread because I want my background quilting to be white. I'm going to show you a different color here in just a minute, just so you can see it better. But for me, when I'm putting this together, I just want it to be a little more subtle with the quilting. And so that is a personal preference. It is absolutely up to you what thread color you use. But it's the best part is to watch it quilt, which is pretty cool. All right. Okay. So Any questions while we're waiting for that? I'm going to show you real quick while that's stitching out a few samples. Let's see. Okay, Vicki, I may have missed this. Do you move the design down if you don't background quilt? Vicki, if you will just follow the instructions on 24, it will that step of actually moving your fabric. Let me show you on this one. On step 24 or on page 24, it will actually have you fold up your fabric on the bottom and you line that up with the machine embroidery steps, and then you don't have to do any shifting of it. Okay, it will take care of that for you. So don't worry about that. All right. That is if you're not doing background quilting. Great question, by the way, Vicki. Okay. Okay, Sherry, she's asking, did you put the fusible backing on the background fabric? And the answer is yes. I'm glad you brought that up, Sherry. Here's another example of one of our background pieces of fabric here. And what Sherry's asking is, did you put fusible on the back of it? And I did. I like to use the Kimberbell fusible backing. Looks like this in your quilt shop. This is what I use for every block I do. It will help prevent puckering, and it just gives it some extra structure that you're going to love. So be sure to check out the fusible backing. It stays in there the whole time, that you don't tear it away, and you use that in addition to extra stabilizer that it calls for in the pattern. Great question, Sherry. Okay, I wanted to show you real quick what I'm stitching out here on with the background quilting will end up looking like this. Let's go ahead and go to this camera. Isn't that cute? Here I show it as an example in pink. And then I also wanted to bring this back because if you remember, if you were here with me on Monday, you may remember that we did clear blue tiles and used 2 tiles to be able to get that background quilting if you didn't have a large enough hoop. And isn't that awesome how seamless it looks? It just looks like it flows together. It's just awesome. So, and I sprayed out my blue marks with just a mister bottle, and we're good to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at, well, let me show you what this looks like here first. Okay. There we go. And here we go. There we go. Isn't that pretty? I love it. So now we are done with the quilting. We are good to go, and we are ready to now follow the instructions on page 24. But don't forget, there's a couple of steps we need to do a little bit differently. Do you remember my mistake on Monday? Gotta love life, right? Let's look at page 24, and I'm not going to make that mistake today. All right. So at the top of page 24 on the second column, that's where you would be following these exact instructions if you weren't doing your background quilting. So the couple of people that had asked about that, follow it exactly as outlined here. But we've already done our background quilting. Okay, we've already done it. We don't need to do steps 1 or 2. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that out. Let's do that here. So I've got, there we go. So this is where it's talking about doing a, oh, I got to turn this around. I got to remember this is all upside down for you. So we're going to make it a little bit easier today. All right. Whoop, there we go. All right. Okay, so this is to stitch a placement line so you know where to put your design. Well, we don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to mark out step 1 right there. Okay. Then it gives you a couple of extra steps where you have to fold up your fabric by 1 inch. We don't have to do that because we're doing background quilting. If I wasn't doing background quilting, yes, you would have to do that. The next step is to say, it says to tape it down. We don't have to do that. Okay, so I'm crossing that out. And the next step is step 2 right here. And it is having you, let's see, it's stitching a tack down line for the fabric. No, we've already done that with our background quilting. So we're going to skip that. So in essence, we are skipping machine step 1 and machine step 2, okay, or in other words, the next 2 steps on our machine. Then it'll go to step 3, which it says to stitch the mylar placement line. That's where we want to start, okay? Again, this is if we are doing background quilting. So because, question.
Okay, Kim, there was a question about.
Let's go ahead and go to this front camera too.
So it's how do you actually tell your machine to skip those steps? I think they're just a little bit. I'm confused too.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm glad you asked that question, Margaret and Andrew. So for both of you and anyone, if anyone else has that question, that's a great one. It's a great one. Let me show you. Let's go up close here to here. Now, again, every machine is going to be a little different. So bear with me here. But what you will find is that they're all similar enough to have some type of button that has you either advance steps or take back steps. So on this machine, I am going to press this button here. It sometimes will have like a plus or minus symbol, like adding, going forward on steps or taking away steps. Many machines will actually give you the ability to do it even by number of stitches. But what I want you to look here is that we've got a thread spool, okay? And so we can look at the thread spool, and if it says plus, it means we're going to the next step. If it says minus, it means we're going back a step. Isn't that great? So in this case, we need to skip 2 steps, right? We need to skip the first one and the second one. Well, it's a little bit different this time because we've already done combined our quilting. So I want you to look here. What I'm seeing here is step 6 on my machine. That's there because I already did the background quilting. So it actually added some numbers there to account for the background quilting that was happening. So in my mind, I just know skip 2 steps. Okay, just skip 2 steps. I'm going to hit the plus symbol 2 times. 1, I did it once. It skipped to step 7. I do it again. Whoop, I skip to step 8. Now I'm ready to do my lights. Okay, does that help? Andrew and Margaret. Did that make sense, Andrew?
It did.
Kind of, sort of. Okay, yeah. Hopefully that helped, Margaret. I'm glad you asked because you definitely want to skip those steps. They're not needed. There's no need to do them on your machine because we already did the machine or the background quilting. It's already tacked down. There's nothing else we need to do to position it. We are ready for the fun. We are ready to just go with the next step on our machine, which is number 3 in your book, or not in your book, your printed instructions, if you printed them out. And that is, it says, stitch the mylar placement line. And it's showing a gold box. So that means I'm also going to switch up my thread colors. And so I want to quickly do that. Of course, with machine embroidery, you can change the colors to whatever you'd like and whenever you'd like, but I am going to follow them as outlined. And it's going to do my little placement lines for the lights. Okay. So these are great questions. Yeah, Barbara Jones, that's cute, Barbara. She says, they must not make as many mistakes as I do. That button gets a lot of use at the Jones house. Yeah, Barbara, I think we're all with you too. I think we all can relate to the idea that, mistakes happen, or if like a needle breaks or a thread breaks or something like that. It's nice to have the ability to move steps forward or go steps back for sure. All right. So I went ahead and stitched that placement line, and boy, maybe I should have just gone ahead and done that in black so you could see it better. But let's see what we can see on the screen here. We've got the yellow squares. They're just little lights, all right? And if you look at there's a bullet point that is right after that number 3 in your instructions, and it says place the lamp light mylar right side up. Well, in your embellishment kit, you actually get a little piece of gold mylar. And so I'm going to just place that on top. You would look at this kind of like, see that there's my little squares. I'm going to place that on top just like I would do fabric. Okay. And I'm going to tape that in place so it doesn't shift. And then I'm going to keep my thread, the gold color or the yellow color, because right now it's going to stitch on top of it. So step 4 in the instructions says to stitch the mylar tack down line and decorative fill. So it's going to go over the top of all that fun mylar that gives it its shimmer and shine, and then you'll tear it away. So let's go ahead and go to that point. Yeah, Vicki, the quilting designs are sold separately. The reason being is that not everyone has hoops that are large enough to do the background quilting designs. And so that is a separate purchase for those that want to do it. Yeah, that's available separately. Okay. All right. Yeah, Kay asked a good question. She said, would it be good for newbies or those who need machine step numbers to do the quilting first and then load the block file? Yeah, you absolutely can do that. You don't have to combine the designs. Combining the designs also combines the step numbers, and that's why things can look a little different in your instructions than on your machine. But if you wanted to do them separately, you absolutely could do that. You could quilt the whole background first and then go back and do just the machine embroidery steps for the applique. Not a problem. Good idea. Okay, so I have done, turn this the right way here. I have done this decorative fill, and now it just tells me to pull this away. I love this. I don't have to cut anything. I'm just going to gently pull this mylar away, and what is left is just this sparkly little lights there. I love it. Okay, now the next step it says to do is to stitch the satin outline and then the fairy light eyelets. So I'm going to do both of those steps and answer any questions as we go. Okay. Okay, Patton says, if you did the two separately, wouldn't it be hard to line up the bottom of the lamppost to the bottom of the quilting? That's another great question, Patton. I actually talk about that on Monday. Last Monday, we talked about what would you do if you did those separately. And so this design might help show that a little bit better. What you would do, here I did this separately, and then I would keep it all in the hoop. I wouldn't have taken it out. Okay, so pretend this is still in the hoop. And I would then use my arrows on the machine to shift that block down, that house down, or the lamppost down, till I got to where this this batting tack down line is. You have to be able to feel it to know where it kind of lands. So it's kind of a guessing game for a minute. You shift it, and then you use your arrows to find out what area it's covering, you want to make sure that it's pretty close to the bottom. Okay. And if it's not, then you shift it again, and then you shift it again. It's a little bit more of a guessing game. It can be done. People do it all the time. But you got to work with your machine a little bit to do some shifting around. Okay. Great question. Okay. Yes, Christy says you could just write the new numbers next to the ones that you printed out. You just add 5 to the number. Yeah, because the machine embroidery steps for the background quilting were 5 steps. So now you just add, okay, now we're on 6, now we're on 7 and such. Great idea, Christy. Okay, so it's done the satin outline. I'm just going to continue it in the same yellow thread to do the little eyelet for the fairy lights, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Any other questions before we go on? All right. Kathy says, if you don't want to do the fairy lights, can you skip the fairy light eyelets? And the answer, Kathy, is yes. And that's one of the reasons why we put any of the eyelets we put as a separate step, so that you could easily just skip it. Not a problem at all. Yep. Okay. All righty, so now we've got that done. The next step is to do black. I'm going to change it to black thread, and that is going to be the lamppost. And then while that lamppost is stitching out, I'm actually going to show you my tips for doing the fringed wreath that hangs on it. That's going to take just a minute, and we'll go from there. All right. What other questions? Let's see. Diana said, I may make another without using lights, putting crystals in the fairy light circles. I love that idea, Diana. Yeah, Diane. Yeah, you could still stitch out the eyelets, but as Diane mentioned, you could put little crystals in there too. I think that would be beautiful for sure. Okay. Yeah, Jacqueline says that she used the eyelet step as a guide to place the crystals. Great idea, Jacqueline. You know, let's see if we can get an up close of this here. Yeah, so here's an example of the houses, right? And if you totally skip that step, then you may have some curvatures that you didn't want. Let's see if I can point this out. Like you would have a curve right there, which might not bother you, but it would probably be there from the satin stitching. So you may want to just go ahead and stitch them out, but instead now put the crystals in those areas. So it's absolutely up to you. Okay. All right. Sherry asked, do I change the bobbin to black for the lamppost? Sherry, you certainly could. And oftentimes with black, I like to change it to a black bobbin, but that's more so if you're doing lettering. With this stitch out, I'm not worried about the bobbin. It doesn't show through. It doesn't pull through. But sometimes when you're doing small letters, that will happen. And so I always like to use, if I'm using black on top, I use black on the bobbin too. So great question. Okay, the next thing I want to do is another little visual. And I really thought through this yesterday when I was thinking, okay, how would be the best way to teach how to do this fringe wreath? It's darling and it's so cute, and maybe many of you have done fringe before. So I kind of like went back into my teaching brain, right? I used to be a 4th grade school teacher. I said, how can I make this easier, or how can I show you the best way possible visually? So I did a couple things. Let's look at your instructions on page 24. Okay. You're going to notice, here we go. Kim got out her markers. Okay. I like them markers, right? And I circled a few things that I want you to pay attention to right along here. You will notice that, yes, there are some squares that would show us, normally like what color we're on and such. And so there's some green squares. But do you also notice, I'm going to use this here to point it out a little bit better. Do you also notice there's little bobbin spools, okay, in between? That's because one of the best tips I could share with you is to use something we call water soluble thread. How many of you have ever used a water soluble thread in your bobbin? My friends, this right here will change your life with Fringe, at least, right? Okay. So the key is to know when to change it. So you need to make sure that as you read these steps, that you are paying a lot of close attention to when to change the thread to water soluble bobbin and when to change it to a regular bobbin. Okay. The reason being, let's go ahead and go to the front. Okay. This would absolutely happen to me. There's no doubt about it. And maybe it's happened to you too. But has anyone ever used water soluble bobbin thread and forgot they had water soluble bobbin thread in their bobbin, right? What happens is, just as the name implies, if you will use it where it's outlined to use it, it works beautifully. If you forget to change it back to a regular bobbin on certain steps, you're going to wash away all your threads and all your work will have been for nothing except for a really funny experience, right? We can laugh at ourselves. So why do you change it back and forth? Well, there's a series of steps that happen when you are doing the wreath, and I thought I would show you with this color guide. All right, so here we go. Kim took out her markers. And the very first thing it says, can we get any closer on that, Andrew?
Hold it up.
Hold it up. Okay. And closer. Ooh, yeah, even better. There we go. Okay, woo. All right, I'm giving Andrew a run for his money. Okay, so the first thing I circled right here is to change bobbin to water soluble thread or visible thread color. I will tell you now, go ahead and go to the front and then we'll go back to this one. Or yeah, I will tell you now that if you will just get water soluble bobbin thread, you are going to be loving me. Okay, you're going to be like, okay, why didn't I do that a long time ago? Because it's so much easier. Now, if you don't have water soluble thread, it's okay. It's only a few dollars too. It's not too bad. But if you don't have it, then you want to change your bobbin to a color that will be more visible, because what ends up happening is that you have to cut your bobbin afterwards, after it's all stitched out, and having it a different color will help you see where to cut. All right. So I'm going to show you how I do it with water soluble because it's so much easier. All right, let's go back to this one. The first step here, I circled in green. Okay, I'm going to change my bobbin and I've circled this in green. What this is, it says, now I got to read it upside down. Stitch the outer fringe line. This right here, I'm doing this in the same steps, right? Okay. This is in green. Whoops, this is in green because I am showing what that step looks like. Okay. Then I changed it to pink just for the sake of a demo. keep your thread green the whole time. Don't change it. But with the next step, it says okay, after the green has been stitched, it says to change to a regular bobbin thread. Why? Because what happens is now there's a series of stitches that has to tack down what you just stitched. And that's why I circled it in pink. This is what happens. Whoop. I stitched my first step, which was the outline or the long stitches for the wreath. But after that came what I'm calling the pink step, and that's why I did it in pink thread, is because I had to change my thread back to a regular bobbin because this is what holds all those stitches in place. This is what tacks down those stitches. This is the step that makes sure that all of your work out here doesn't unravel, okay? So that's why in this example, I'm showing it in pink, okay? Now, next comes yellow. Let me tell you why. Let's go back here to the instructions. I stitched my green, I stitched my pink. Look at what's underneath there. It says change bobbin to water soluble thread or visible thread color. All right. So I go ahead and switch that bobbin out, check. And now my next step is yellow. That's why I have yellow on my sample. And it says change, let's see, stitch the inner fringe wreath. So there's 2 layers of wreaths going on here, guys. Let's go back to this. Whoop. This looks really funky in all these colors, doesn't it? Please keep it in green when you go to do it. Okay. So remember, I started here. Whoop. I started here. Then I changed my bobbin thread to a regular thread, not water soluble, and it stitched the pink so that it tacks down those threads. Then I change it back to water soluble bobbin because I want those to fringe eventually. And that yellow stitches, those yellow stitches actually covered what we just did. So there really is pink underneath there. Okay, this is just helping you to see that it went from here to here to here. And then next, what are we going to do? We have to make sure that we change our bobbin again, right? Because this next step is, I put it in blue, all right, just so you can see it, the difference in color. And that tacks down all of those long stitches. But you have to make sure you have regular bobbin thread in. If you kept the water soluble thread in there at that point, you're not going to have a wreath anymore, right? Something's got to hold it down and keep it in its place. Well, that's why we used regular bobbin thread there. So let me back up to here. This is why I did it in blue. Let's look at step. Okay. I changed it to regular bobbin thread and I circled this in blue, stitch the inner wreath tack down stitches. Remember, tack down means it's going to stay put. It's tacking it down. So what did I do? This next step was the little blue stitches. That is what's tacking it down so that when I go to spray water on the back of this so that everything fringes, though that blue tack down line that you see here is going to keep it in place. It's going to make sure that nothing unravels with your wreath, except the areas you want it to. And then finally, you can fringe your wreath. Now, how do you do that? Well, let me show you, first of all, this step or this row of steps. Go ahead up here. This row of steps I just showed you, I used just regular bobbin thread the whole time, just so that you could see the difference, okay? I used a white one because I had some darker colors. I used green, right, for a wreath. So I used a white bobbin and I was fine. I could see on the back. Let's go ahead and look at that. I could see on the back where my bobbin stitches were. And if I just used regular thread, I would just try to cut along the areas that show the white stitches. It gets a little tricky though, because this wreath, it's got a lot of stitches in there, and you're going to be afraid to cut the wrong ones. Trust me, you'll be fine. It won't be a problem. You will probably make some cuts that shouldn't be there and some that are, but in the end, it will all look like a wreath. It'll look just fine. Okay. It doesn't look that great right now because we've got lots of different colors showing. So it kind of looks odd, right? But if we had kept green in there the whole time as intended, green, 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 it's going to eventually end up looking like a wreath when it's all cut. But here's the cool part, guys. I'm now going to show you on the machine itself how I got this look, which I think looks a lot better. I think it's fluffier because I didn't take any risk of cutting the wrong areas. And look how good that looks. Now, I haven't pulled up this side yet. You're like, wait a minute, it's not done. Well, I'm going to show you that in just a minute. But I just wanted to see you how you can see, like here, here, it's very kind of wacky, right? It works, but I cut a lot of wrong stitches just because it was hard to see that on the back. But boy, when I used water-soluble bobbin thread, look how nice that looks. But again, if I had done this all in green, I don't think I would notice. In fact, I did do my sample that way. Where did my sample go? Oh, here we go. I didn't use water-soluble bobbin in my sample, and I think it looks fantastic. If I do say so myself. But it's because it's all in green. You don't see all the variations with the different colors that I just showed you in the example. Okay, so it can work without it, but boy, your life is going to be a lot easier with it. So here's what we're going to do. In fact, this morning, first of all, I'm going to change my top thread to green. Unless you want a pink wreath or black wreath, that'd be cute for Halloween. The black wreath, could use anything. You might be looking at this wreath going, ooh, that would make a cute flower. You could put like a little button in the center of it and make a whole bunch of fringed flowers. That would be darling, right? Okay. So I changed my top thread to green, and I'm keeping it green the whole time. The only reason why I showed it in different colors here is to help illustrate the steps better, and so that you can also see exactly what's going on, okay? Because pretty soon it's all going to look like the same mess. Not mess. Wreath. Okay. What am I going to do? You guys, you might be yelling at the screen. Kim, change your bobbin. Yes. Look at page 24. It says change your bobbin to water-soluble thread or visible thread. Yes. I've got I hope I have my water-soluble thread here. Yeah, I do. I went into our product development team this morning, and I said, hey guys, I'm doing a thing on Fringe today. Do you have any tips that you would want me to share with them? And there was two things they said. One of the gals, she said, write with a black marker, like a Sharpie, water soluble on your bobbin. Okay. I don't know. Can we get an up close of that? Maybe I can show it right here and see it this way or right here. Here we go. I don't know how well you can see that, but I put WS on there for water soluble. Yeah, you don't want to use the wrong bobbin thread for like a major project and all of a sudden it all washes away. Okay, so that was one tip. The other tip was from Cheryl on our product development team. And I said, oh yeah, I'm definitely writing that, and I'm putting it on the sticky note in here on my machine. I put, Cheryl said, change your bobbin. So let's go ahead and look at that. Shout out to Cheryl for that comment. Whoop. Cheryl said, change your bobbin. So, do what Cheryl says and what Kim's telling you right now. Put a sticky note right there. Change your bobbin. Change your bobbin between each of those little steps. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is change my bobbin. And we can do that here. I am now putting in water soluble thread, bobbin thread. And now I can stitch my first step, which is the outer fringe wreath. All right. Oh, I hope I'm saving any of you from making the crazy but understandable mistake of keeping water soluble bobbin in your machine when it's not supposed to be there. Yeah, we don't want to do that. Okay. All right. Yeah, Indy says keep embroidery bobbins separate from sewing bobbins. Yeah, that's a good thought too. And I would say separate from water soluble bobbins as well. Okay. All right. So again, I use this water soluble thread just in my bobbin, not in the top, just in the bobbin. And you'll see why here in a minute, because I'm actually going to spray it with water. I'm going to show you how it all comes together. Okay. All right. Oh, Colleen says I wrote H2O. Also store that bobbin in a Ziploc so humidity doesn't dissolve it. Boy, Colleen, I never even thought about the humidity. That's a great comment. Thank you for sharing that. I would have never thought about that. Thank you. Okay, so it's now doing those long stitches. So fun. Oh, I just saw it pass through here real quick. Thought that was a great idea. Oh, Carmen. She says a variegated green thread would be pretty too. Ooh, I absolutely agree with that. Yes. Jocelyn also says use H2O. Okay. All right. It's almost done. We are doing on page 24 in your instructions, we stitch the outer fringe wreath, and right underneath it, it says change bobbin to a regular bobbin thread. So remember what Cheryl said, change your bobbin. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I've got my bobbin. All right, I'm just going to tilt this up here, Andrew, so they can see it from here. But remember that was my first part of the wreath. I used water soluble bobbin thread in that. Okay. But now I need to do that second part, which is the tack down, but I need to change my bobbin to a regular thread. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then it will do my tack down line. Remember, that's just a tiny, teeny little line there that's going over it. Let's go ahead and look at while that's stitching. What is happening right now? We already did this one. And now what is happening is this tiny one, this pink line. But of course, we kept it to green. Okay, that's what's stitching out. That's what's holding all of those threads in place. Okay. All right. Now, okay, the next step. I don't know how well you can see that, but we had the long stitches from before. Now we had tiny, teeny little stitches just to hold that in place. That was with regular bobbin thread. Don't forget what Cheryl said. Change your bobbin. Okay, so I'm going to change the bobbin to water soluble for my next step. And do the second part of the inner wreath. Still kept it to green, and now it's going to do those long stitches. Okay. Okay, Elaine, she says, not sure what you mean. Which step or steps would you use the H2O thread? Elaine, take a look at page 24 in your instructions. It will outline it. It's towards the bottom, lower right side. It will outline exactly when you change it, okay? So if you will just follow that step by step, you know, maybe give yourself a little check mark each time you do it, you will find it. But basically, you're using water-soluble thread when it's doing the very long stitches. I've got a piece of paper and a marker. I can show you, right? So the first step, it was doing these really long stitches. Boy, don't you love that artwork? Wow, amazing. Okay, with these long stitches, this is what's going to eventually be our fringe, right? We want it to come out and look like a fringe wreath. So what we did here is we put water-soluble bobbin thread in. But the very next step, I'm going to do that in pink to follow with my color guide here, but you would keep your thread green. But the next step was to do little tiny stitches on top of that. And that tacks it down. It makes sure that those threads, these don't completely fall out. It's holding it in place. It's the glue, right? So it now does that all the way around it. All right. That is when you use regular thread. We don't want that to wash away. Okay. So then if we go on to the next step, which we just did, I just heard it finish. It will do now long stitches again. I'm going to do it in yellow so you can see the difference here. It does the long ones all the way across. It even goes into this green area. Don't forget, keep it green the whole time. But for our demo, this is how we're doing it. Okay, they're long stitches. You're going to use water-soluble thread. But in the end, what I'm about to do now, let's go ahead and go to the machine before I forget. Cheryl said, change my bobbin. Okay, I'm changing my bobbin, Cheryl. Here we go. Change my bobbin. It was water soluble. Now I'm putting in, oh my gosh, I barely have enough. We'll see if we can finish it off. I'm putting in regular thread. Boom, there we go. Place that baby back on. And now it's going to do the tack down stitches to hold that layer in place. Let me show you here what's happening on the machine. Okay, so the very last step is going to do these little tiny tack down stitches all the way around. I wanted regular bobbin thread so that those don't pull out when it's done. Okay. Elaine says, I get that. I'm asking for the other fringe designs. Oh, okay, Elaine. Yeah, the same thing. If they're the longer stitches, the ones that are being fringed, then those are the ones that you're going to be doing with water-soluble bobbin thread. If it is called a tack down stitch, then anywhere where it's referred to as a tack down stitch, that means it's holding it in its place. Then that's when you would use regular thread. All right. Are you ready to see this? You guys, we're done with this block. Look at that. That is certainly pretty as is, but wait till I show you how this works with the water soluble, because that's what we're all waiting for at this point, right? We want to see it. So I'm going to pop this out of the hoop. All right. And turn it to the back. And this is where I'm going to get out just a little spray bottle here of water. And I'm just going to give that some soaks. Okay, I'm just spraying the back of it. Okay, might have to do it a few times. Just kind of let it work its magic here, do its thing. Okay, and then I'm going to bring it to the front. And you can take, I'm just going to use this little guy. This is called a needle tool, but something that's not, it needs to be, you know, a seam ripper maybe, but don't put it on the sharp side of the seam ripper. You just want something that's going to gently lift these these threads up. So do you see how I've pulled it right underneath? Let's get a close up of that. I've just slid this right underneath those long stitches, and look what happens. It just comes up. Ah. You might have to roll it around a little bit. Again, if you do end up using like a seam ripper, the side of a seam ripper, just make sure your blade is not up against the thread, because you don't, I mean, you don't want to cut your stitches. You just want to lift your stitches. Okay, so you can do that. There's also, you could also take your finger. Let's see if I can do it this way here. And I just take my nail to it and I just try to kind of lift it up that way around the sides. Just be patient with it. The water is doing its work as we speak, so it might not come up immediately, but it'll get there. Okay. I mean, it doesn't take long, I promise. See what's happening? I'm just pulling that up with my fingernail so that I don't accidentally cut anything. And there we go. Now, remember there was 2 layers on there. Okay. It looks like I've gotten the outermost layer, but I want to make sure I'm getting that second layer. So I'm just going to give it a few more squirts and see if I can gently pull it up that way. Then you've got 2 layers of fringe going on. Okay. Oh yeah, I like that. See, I'm just sliding this needle tool underneath those long stitches, and then just kind of working my way up with it. Oh, isn't that pretty? This is such a fun technique. We have we've got all sorts of, we use this technique on our happy hoop ornament decor, Christmas decor. That's a lot of fun. We did that like with our manger scene. We did that like on the beard of Joseph on the nativity ornaments. We did it with our sheep on the nativity ornaments. We gave it some fringe. We've used this in a lot of different events. We've done flowers. We've got a product called, maybe it's called Fun with Fringe. And we did flowers or jars. Oh my gosh, someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Jars for all seasons or something like that. And it had different flowers coming up out of little mason jars. It was really cute. Okay. So you just kind of play with it. Enjoy the process. Don't stress too much about this. Just work with it. Just enjoy it. Okay. There we go. So there's a few areas I might want to go back and lift again. And if you're having a hard time getting any of it out, you can just spray a little bit more water on the back. But isn't that a whole heck of a lot easier than trying to cut bobbin threads? If you don't have water soluble bobbin, that's okay. Like I said, you would just, let's go back to this one here. You would just slide like your scissors or your seam ripper underneath the bobbin and just gently cut away the back threads. And then it will come out like that. Okay. All right. So I didn't do this full one over here so that you could see where it laid down and where it came up. So anyway, hopefully that helped. Woo! Okay. Heidi says the mason jar design is the best. Thank you, Heidi. Heidi, if you can help me with the name of that. I can't remember. I think it's Jars for All Seasons or something like that. I don't remember. Anyway, it's a good one. And there's so much fun you can have with Fringe. All right, so that is the tutorial for today. I hope you enjoyed that. Before you leave, I just want to quickly show you one other thing. And I didn't bring my cutting mat, so I'm just going to use my folder here to help with this. But have any of you seen this tool in your sewing box and wondered, what do I ever use that for? Has anyone ever seen one of these? It is what we would call an eyelet punch. Oh, there's a nice up close picture. There we go. I get this whenever I bought a sewing machine. I've gotten one of these tools, and I've always thought, wonder what that's for. Well, this is a perfect time to use it. Or when would I use it? I knew it was an eyelet punch, but when would I use that? Well, I'm going to show you. So one of the things, this is just a tip for getting those holes punched in the middle of your eyelets. So whether you do it right through here, or I already did it on one of them. Oh, here we go. There we go. Somehow you need to get a hole punch through there. And so you could certainly use, little snips, some scissor snips, which we've done. Okay, we've done that here with these flexi snips from Kimberbell. And it's got a nice point there that if I were to just take that and stick one of them in there and just kind of gently move it around, I could make my hole that way. Once I've got the hole there, sometimes I will just like keep the scissors together, the blades together, and then just increase that size of hole by wiggling it one way, turning it to the back, wiggling it the other way. I've also used these scissors before. These are also from Kimberbell, and these are our micro tip scissors. I've used those. But right now, I'm just going to show you how easy it is with an eyelet punch. Okay. All I did was put that right there. And when I say I forgot my cutting mat, it would be nice to do it on some kind of rubbery kind of surface. All right. I wouldn't do it smack in the middle of my cutting mat because it might leave a little indentation. I would just do it like on the very outer edge, but or a piece of wood, a wood block would also work. Yeah, any of those. And then just take a hammer. I have it on my folder, so you can see there's lots of possibilities, right? And let's go ahead and move the camera up just a little bit. There we go. Got my hammer, and I'm just going to give it a good whack, and there I've got a hole. If I want to go a little bit deeper, here, and then I can just twist it in there. I can also do it from the other side in that same hole. Give it a few punches. Boom, boom, boom. And then I've got my hole. Okay. So there's just a couple of ideas for you on how to do that. So you could use the eyelet punch. You can use scissors. There's all kinds of eyelet types of tools you can use, or as some people mentioned, they're going to be using crystals, which I think is really a cute idea. All right, guys. Well, we try to keep these close to an hour. So it is that time, but I will go back through the comments and see if I can help answer any other questions you may have. This is something that you can certainly refer to in the future. If you're ever doing Fringe, check that out. Someone did say it is called Fun with Fringe. All right, perfect. Fun with Fringe. Check that out from Kimberbell. It's fantastic. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this today. Thank you for joining me. Have a whole lot of fun with your candy cane laying, whether you make it into a bench pillow or a table runner or wall hanging or a valance or, oh my gosh, a mantle scarf. I've seen it all and they're all fantastic ideas. I can't wait to see what you do. I will see you next Friday or this upcoming Friday, just 2 days away, where we're going to put this all together. Finish it. We're going to quilt our background quilting designs. We're going to add the embellishments. I'm going to show you how to do that glitter snow. Oh, we got a lot of fun still ahead of us. So again, thanks for joining me. I'll see you at noon Mountain Time for the next Sew Along with Kimber Bell, the lunch hour Sew Along with Kimber Bell, Friday at noon Mountain Time. See you then. Bye-bye.